I'm Eamon.
I'm Merlin.
And we're a Gay
And His Enby.
Episode 4. Back at it with you for another great week of talking about all the things that we watched this week. It's myself, Eamon, and Merlin here again. It's been a long week here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Yes.
Very snowy week. I've been fighting off a little bit of the creeping in of illness. So if I feel a little groggy today, that's the explanation for it. But I'm ready to get talking about some of the stuff that we've been seeing.
Oh, yeah, definitely. We've got a lot for you this week. We've got the second part and surprisingly final part of the Salt Lake City reunion.
Plot twist.
Right. We were expecting 3 parts from them, and I think we had been told there were 3 parts, but there's only 2. We also have the next episode. This is episode 16 of season 7 of Potomac. We also have episode 12 of season 5 of Real Housewives of Miami. Just a quick trigger warning during the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City and during Real Housewives of Miami discussions. There are discussions of both attempted suicides and successful suicides. So if that is something that is going to bother you, please, please, please skip those sections. Do not put your mental health at risk. But first, as always,
Jinx. Drag Race for this week. RuPaul's Drag Race. Episode 5. Are we on 5?
Yep, sure are.
It feels like, God, there's still 13, at this point, 13 queens still in the competition. It's a lot, but this was a really fun episode. We got our first design challenge of the season. And we'll definitely get into that when we get to the main challenge. But obviously from the last episode, Sugar goes home. Very, very sad. Spice is very sad. She's crying a lot in the opening of this, a lot, which I get for a reality standpoint, but it's you're gonna see her in a couple weeks.
Also, look in the mirror.
Oh my God, that's so terrible.
If you're missing her face, look in the mirror. I'm just saying. They're twins.
It was so Spice is crying like her dog died, which we talked before about how their twin relationship is so close and almost too close in the sense of they haven't really ventured off without the other in the past. So I think that's kind of manifesting. The only other thing from this little intro part from the end of the last episode was Spice getting a little upset towards the end and basically being like, there's girls that don't deserve to be here over Sugar.
Do you mean Spicy's getting a little spicy?
I wasn't going to say that, but of course you would take that baton.
Of course I would.
And I got to say, this is why I love Mistress Isabel book. She's just like, girl, just say it. Say who it is. Say it right now. And just keeps prodding it in a way where it's yes. And everything is hinting to that. It's obviously Aura, and the fact that Aura was also in the bottom. I don't think Spice was wrong necessarily. I think there's an argument to be made about who did worse in that Snatch Game performance. But
yeah, at least Sugar had something.
She had a joke. It didn't land, but either way. So we go into the workroom the next day, and then we get our first mini challenge of the season.
Reading challenge.
Finally a mini challenge after, the weeks of all the truncated episodes and trying to fit everything in. Though this reading challenge, I will say this, the reading challenge was very good this episode. I wonder if part of that is the fact that it only lasted 2 minutes and they really gave most of them only 1 read each.
Mm-hmm. They only really gave a second read to a couple people.
Yeah.
And they were mostly people that they were considering
standouts,
giving the win to.
Yeah, but everyone I would say did pretty. There was no complete duds as we've seen in past seasons. Yeah. I think
no clunkers.
I've been worried of whether the reading challenge should exist going forward because of this sort of newer generation of queens and whether they kind of have that proper understanding of how to read in the sort of more traditional sense of what we saw in Paris is Burning would inspire the challenge. But everyone did really well. I think even though she didn't win, my favorite read was Lux's.
Hold on. Did Rue even give that intro to the reading challenge this year?
I think she did, but
I'm not remembering her giving the full in the grand tradition of Paris is Burning.
I have a feeling she did. But it's just so hard with these hour episodes because it's like
they probably did it, but they sped it up so fast that it went by.
It's like nothing sticks in your brain long enough. But to what I was saying, I thought Lux had the best one, even though Lux didn't win the reading challenge. Her read on Marsha.
Oh yeah, Marshalls.
Based on your wardrobe, you're clearly only shopping at Marshalls. Yeah, it was. I thought I liked Mistress's read on Anitra. We know you like to walk that duck, but you can finally get rid of the beak.
Oh yeah,
it's a funny one.
That was good.
And then Lucy, who ended up winning the reading challenge, she went there with a lot of the reads, which I always like. The saying that Malaysia should really embrace her first name and disappear like the plane.
That was great.
I think I saw she was. I think it was when she was at Roscoe's talking about her Snatch Game performance as Joan Rivers and how many jokes they had to cut basically because they were.
Oh yeah.
Because naturally, when you're doing Joan Rivers, it's like you're gonna go.
Oh yeah, you've got to paint the wall with them.
Yeah,
you can't skimp on the one-liners if you're doing Joan Rivers.
Joan didn't hold back ever, really, and but it was good to see that joke made it in because that was one that I could have definitely seen get put on the chopping block.
And I think the reason that she ended up winning the mini challenge is because she was giving reads that were not the obvious one.
Yeah.
Like if you're looking at the name, since we already mentioned this read, Marsha, you're either going to go the Brady Bunch route,
right,
or you're going to go to something that sounds like Marsha.
Mm-hmm.
And they went with Marshalls, which is great. It was a hilarious read, but I think going the next level in and doing the missing plane bit
right
with Malaysia, it was a level deeper that just really showed off how witty and how cunning her brain is.
Yeah. I also, now that I think about it, I also really like Sasha Colby's read about how Anitra's name sounds like the insurance company where Lucy got her bad facelift.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
It's like, I love a good 1-2, get somebody that you weren't expecting in a read.
Oh, yeah.
That's always really fun. But as you mentioned, Lucy wins the challenge. And then we move on to the Maxi Challenge for this week, which is a design challenge. But this time they do a little bit of a twist on the design challenge, which I actually really liked.
Oh, you wanted a twist?
Oh, God. But no, so instead of everyone sort of having the same brief, so to speak, in terms of you get all this trash and you have to make a look out of it, basically everyone's divided into houses. So we have the House of Visage for Michelle Visage, House of Cressley for Carson Cressley, and the House of Matthews for Ross Matthews. And you're basically going to have to take items from this home design aesthetic of each of them, which, I get it. House, it's really clever. And then not just make looks out of it, but your team that you're in the same house with, you're basically making a collection. So it has to all kind of flow in a certain way. Which we'll get to when we get to the runway because I had thoughts in terms of that element of it. But I thought that was a great way to sort of twist it on its head and give them a bit more of a focus.
Mm-hmm. Well, it gives I've always really liked challenges like you were talking about with the best reads or the 1-2 punches.
Yeah.
Challenges that are 1-2 punches. You've got this, but also this that you need to do. You need to check 2 boxes. Because those are more interesting and they're more you can succeed in one element and fail in another. And I think those are really great ways to test a queen's mettle.
Yeah.
What do you really have? How creative really are you?
And so we get them going into the rooms and sort of tearing things apart. You have the Visage room, obviously, is more animal print based. You had a lot of more sort of like they said like country based stuff in the Cressley room. It was like a
Which
lot
doesn't
plaids
make.
and
I mean, it's like old world, like old English, like
which I don't really get
kind
from
of
Carson
look.
Cressley.
No, that's more like it.
Metrosexual.
It
Well, not
honestly,
really metrosexual.
it's kind of an Alan Cumming look.
Yeah.
I mean, and if you're gonna make the connection between Alan Cumming and Carson Kressley, don't, because I mean, really, they're just both flamboyant gay men, but that's the only connection.
Yeah, and then Ross Matthews' room had more of like a Palm Springs vibe, which I guess I can sort of understand. They're tearing through the rooms. One thing I noted, did you notice the Good Jeans by Sunday Riley, like, which is like a skin, like the plug, like it was like in one of the rooms, and Lux is just like, oh, this is Good Jeans by Sunday Riley.
This is the same stuff I use. I'm taking this home.
And it was like, oh my God, really, guys?
How much extra did they pay Lux to do that plug? So probably none, knowing them.
I also feel like we just got we watched we talked last week about how we're also wrestling fans, and we watched the Royal Rumble this past weekend, and the amount of product placement that was in that, I'm like, too much product placement on television.
If I heard the word Mountain Dew Pitch Black one more time during that Royal Rumble,
it's just like, we get it, you want to sell us stuff. I think that's just the way the world is now, and media is.
Yeah,
like,
I get it.
You know,
speaking of, make sure to listen to our ads during our ad break.
Yes, please do. Please support all our good friends on the Sorgatron Media Network. But no, honestly. So also it gets brought up that so Spice mentions how she doesn't know how to sew. And you had a reaction to this because she basically says that, oh yeah, our plan was that if me and Sugar were still here, Sugar was going to basically actually sew everything and I was going to design.
Girl.
I think that's a bold choice. We see obviously
also to assume that both of you are going to make it to all the design challenges. Really?
Well, sure, but I think the to be so blatant as to say like, oh, we're just going to work together in this regard, and like obviously with design challenges we see all the time of other queens helping other queens. Mm-hmm. Like, and we saw it a little bit with like Lux helping Amethyst this episode. But like, I thought that was a bold thing to say.
Yeah. Well, and they reiterated it. If anybody watches the viewing party at Roscoe's, which is a gay bar in Chicago, they do viewing parties and they post the video of it online. They have a lot of the Drag Race girls on. But this week they had Sugar, Spice, and Amethyst. And they reiterated it there, and they just like talked about, yeah, that was our plan going in. It's just like, really?
Part of me, part of me is annoyed by it. Part of me is like, at least that like, they're like, we're not gonna like try to fake it, I guess, in that regard. Which, hey, that's one thing.
I guess, but like, no, I just don't. I don't like it.
So we get they're working on their looks, obviously. Mistress is also pressing Spice more to say who it is, and Spice using the excuse of just like, well, I didn't see the other Snatch Game group, so I would have assumed someone was bad in there. So that's what I meant. It's like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Mistress, I love Mistress just calling it out in the confessional. And then we also get this sort of like, I guess the annual trauma talk, session.
Annual,
weekly. The weekly. There you go. It feels like it goes on for years. But no, this actually was, I thought, really good of like Jax talking about being black and being adopted into a white family and sort of the tribulations with that. I like things that are kind of a little more broad in terms of topic, and like that's something obviously, and I think she has a real sort of nuanced opinion of it in terms of there's a lot of things that you have to, like a lot of trigger points you talked about in certain conversations and like introductions with other people of like, and being considered not black enough. Like,
yeah, it's always a blessing to hear stories from people who are of intersectioning identities, because those of us who are not part of those communities get a glimpse into some of the struggles that they go through on an interpersonal level. Like, obviously, it's blatantly obvious what they deal with in society. But, in and amongst their own community, it's very much not accessible to us, and it shouldn't be, right? It's not ours. But it's nice to be given a glimpse into something that, we don't experience every day as white people.
Yeah, it's always a good conversation to have. So let's get to this runway. I guess the first thing to start off and kind of our general just feeling of the challenge, which was that no one did bad really at all. There was no, I feel like, outright duds across the board. Like, I think there were a lot of people who were in the bottom and sort of more towards the lower tier, where if this was a different season, they probably could have been safe.
Yeah.
Like,
well, also we can talk about the fact that this judging panel was smoking crack.
Sure, they were gay. Here's my issue to it. I think it was so good across the board. And we've had times in Drag Race where things are really good across the board and then they have to judge afterwards. Drag Race does this all the time, which frustrates me. I wish they would just acknowledge it. I wish they would just acknowledge everyone did really good this week and we're nitpicking.
And sometimes they do, but they only will do it in the last, 5 episodes.
Right, but
because then they're like, we're really narrowing it down, and, one of you is going to win this, I guess it's $200,000 now. So, we've really got to be nitpicky, but they only want to do that when it's like the top 6 or the top 5. And it's like have you looked at this runway? Because these are all pretty great.
Right. No, but just, you don't have to lie to the audience. Like, that's my frustrating thing. And you could, nitpick certain elements and put the same people in the bottom, but it was just the way they judged it. So let's get to who are the tops and bottoms of the week. So
before we get to who's the tops and the bottoms of the week, everybody, if you want to see our individual opinions on each of these looks, make sure to check out our Toot and Boot videos on social medias everywhere at a Gay His Enby. That's on TikTok, that's on Instagram, that's everywhere, and we've done our reviews there as we do every week.
Yeah, so let's start with the tops first. Obviously, I think the clear best of the entire group was Lux Noir London. Like,
completely.
Totally stunning. Like, I was aghast when she came out.
So we're talking about the real tops and bottoms, not the bullshit that the judges were saying, right?
Sure. Well, yes. But so Lux is in the top. The zebra print pant that was so, I think, well constructed, and people were talking also, I think, I don't know a lot about fashion and constructing fashion, but like having the lines meet in the way where it didn't look like a patchwork, and like, because obviously you're grabbing curtains, you're grabbing pillowcases, like where it's like you don't have a lot of fabrics and you have to make it all work and put it together. And the way the purple draped and the headdress, I thought it was just such a well conceptualized look. And really top notch. Robin Fierce was also in the top with this sort of tartan half skirt, kind of warrior-ish thing. I really loved it. I loved the sort of embellishments. Like, there was like this stud work on the sort of shoulder piece that I really liked. People didn't like the sort of like thigh-high hooker boots. I actually thought it worked with the look. I thought it showed off her legs really well.
I wish it had been brown to match the bandeau brown leather.
Sure.
But instead it was I think it was patent leather. Like, it was shiny leather boots. So, I mean, to me, it just didn't go with that outfit. I mean, they look good on their own. They just didn't go.
And then we had Sasha Colby in the top from the Matthews group. I mean, just pure stunning body, swimsuit, had a nice sort of just overall understanding of how she was going to look and present it with the high pony. The cape, which she couldn't get off because it was a little too tight around the arms, which is unfortunate. But I mean, like, nobody can dispute it. And obviously, and people can say, oh, it was a bathing suit, but it was a really well done, conceptualized, like, had a lot of elements to it. Bathing suit.
It also, I loved how it echoed the J-Lo dress.
Yes.
Which was worn last season by Sasha's drag daughter,
Carrie
Colby. The actual original dress, honey.
Yes.
Not a recreation, not a mimic, not
She paid money.
She paid money and bought the actual dress that created Google image search.
But it was stunning. And then the fourth top I was in the group was Malaysia Baby Doll Fox, which both of us were
Bullshit.
like, we were just like, huh. I didn't think it was a top. This is my other frustration with the sort of like the conceptualizing and the show aspect of it all. It was more just them emphasizing. So this was your first time sewing something. Wow.
Why does that matter?
Well, it shouldn't.
It shouldn't.
It really shouldn't matter. And credit to her. I mean, she did look good. I think in any other, again, challenge like this would have been a passing grade. You would have been safe.
Right.
But it was not a top level look to me. It was like I didn't like the belt because it felt way too curtain like. Like it felt like because it was the sort of grommets from like a curtain. Like I thought the hat, while inventive, didn't look as much like professionally done. And there were a lot of girls who were wearing things that looked like they could be on like a professional runway.
Yeah. I mean, what normally with these design challenges, that is the same level we get across the board.
Yeah.
What Malaysia did and what Amethyst did is pretty much across the board what we get. We will usually get one or two pieces that is just stunningly constructed, and then we'll usually get a leotard with bags glued to it. You know, something awful. That's going to be in the bottom. We know that. We didn't get that this time. We got a couple that are normally on par with what happens on Drag Race, and then everything else looked like it was made by a designer.
Yeah.
Or at the very least bought off a rack.
Yeah, or brought in like
it looked like they brought it with them.
And that's a real credit to a challenge like this. We don't, like you said, we don't get that often in this challenge.
But my frustration is that when so many of these looks looked like they were professionally made, when you look at Lucy LaDuca and she looked like she could have been a Real Housewife of Beverly Hills in that look.
Yeah.
She looked like she walked off of Rodeo Drive into a boutique and bought that and had it custom fitted. It looked amazing. And she was safe.
Yeah.
And Malaysia was in the top. I mean, that's, again, no shade to Malaysia because that was amazing work for only having constructed one garment previously.
Yeah.
Okay, that was stunningly good. But it was still not top material.
Yeah.
And it should have been in the bottom along with Amethyst.
I agree. I don't know if she should have been in the bottom lip syncing necessarily.
Girl,
but
that hat.
I think
and that cape.
I think there's others that could have been towards the
dress was gorgeous. The dress I loved, but that cape was bad.
But let's get to the other bottom. So you mentioned Amethyst. I think Amethyst, yes, I made perfect sense. We both tooted her in our video. I can credit somebody if they don't have good sewing ability, if they can still style something that's really pleasing. And I think for the most part, she did that. I think she knew how to sort of put a character with it and like give a vibe that I liked. But when you did look closer, yes, it didn't have the craftsmanship that you would want.
Right.
In a sewing challenge.
To quote Derek Barry, everywhere you look, there's a hem. At least there weren't unfinished edges.
Yeah, but she was tripping on her skirt and it was an issue.
Then and that stole wasn't great.
No, but then we get to the other two bottoms. And this is where it was like just so frustrating with the judging. So then we put Jax in the bottom, which
is ridiculous.
I thought Jax looked great. I think
they didn't understand the Heathers reference, which I thought was BS.
Well, it was like Ross in the beginning is just like, "What was your character?" And then Jax like clearly explains it. It's like, "Yeah, I got none of that." What?
Plaid plus a cricket mallet?
Yeah,
like that's clearly a Heathers reference. If you didn't get it then the mullet, clearly indicating 80s, should have
Sure, and it
cinched that in.
And it was, I guess, the mullet was a little deviation from the Heather's thing of making it more sort of like grunge. No, but it made it more
Jax.
Yeah, but I thought the work done to it was really good. People were saying the fit of the jacket was a little off. I didn't see that.
I would have fitted it a little bit better at the bottom of the jacket. It ballooned a little bit, like right at the top, or right at the bottom there of the jacket. But that's so nitpicky.
And the skirt was great. She made like boot covers. Like I thought she'd put a lot of effort into it.
Yeah.
And it looked really, really well.
And the pleated skirt had opposite patterns on it. That's not easy to do.
No. And then we get to Selena S. Titties, which this was just like when they were playing, the lineup was like, oh, okay, Selena's in the top. And they were just like immediately like, yeah, this doesn't work.
I was so furious.
You particularly were really mad.
I was almost ready to, flip a table a la Teresa Giudice, like, you prostitution whore. Like,
Yeah. It was, my other frustration was like, oh, I think it was Michelle that was like, oh, it's overly, it doesn't fit you well. It's a little baggy.
Girl wear.
Selena in the workroom to Rue literally described what her style was, and her style is like she pulls from that sort of like
streetwear,
Latin American, like sort of quote unquote chola look, where it's a little like baggier pants, baggier shirts. Like that's the style, and I don't like that's clearly what she was giving. But it's just also the work into. Not just the sort of like this like knitted, what looked like sort of a knitted top, but then we find out in the lip sync is like a full leotard that she has with a bra, with a leather skirt, which leather is not an easy material to work with.
There was like the construction of that jacket, the puffer jacket that flipped open to be a vest with a cape on it. Like, right. That was not easy to construct. No. That was a very complicated look.
I thought it was the best she's honestly looked this season.
Honestly.
In terms of everything on the runway. But I just didn't understand. I would have put either like aura or spice towards the bottom, just in terms of like either the simplicity of the looks or the fact that like it didn't have the same craftsmanship that I think Jackson Selena's did. It didn't make sense to me. But Lux Noir London wins. I think that's very well deserved. I mean,
correct. Yeah.
Clearly the top look of the night. And then in the bottom, we have Amethyst and we have Selena S. Titties. For third time for Amethyst in the bottom,
I was halfway through making my picket sign by the end of this episode.
But I
was ready to riot in the streets.
Yeah, but luckily the lip sync went the way it did. So they lip synced to Queen by Janelle Monáe. Janelle Monáe was the guest judge this week. I thought
fabulous.
Really great job from her. And Amethyst I think did well like she's done in the past lip syncs. Yeah. But Selena I thought really channeled, attention, that gag with the skirt, like timing it to the lyrics of the song.
Oh, that was so good.
Like genuinely like played it so well. And really deserved to win that lip sync. I think she earned it in a really big way. But sadly Amethyst does go home. I'm sad by that because I had a lot of great hopes for her. I think I said it last week that I thought she could have been like a sleeper that made it to the end. I mean, she's really young in her career. She's only like 2 years in drag. So
yeah. Well, and this week, the challenge and the lip sync both illustrate how advanced the game of Drag Race has become. You can't just be good anymore.
Yeah.
Like everyone was good this episode in everything that they did. All the reads were great. All the, looks on the runway were, really good. And the lip sync from both queens were good. You no longer can be good and get by.
Yeah.
You have to be exceptional. And I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. I think it creates good TV. I think
I think I like it when everyone does well.
I do too, but I also don't. I enjoy looking at a array of queens and going, yeah, this person deserves to go home and feel confident about that.
Sure.
And the better that these queens get season after season, the more production lies to us and tries to gaslight us into telling us that this queen deserves to go home.
Yeah, I agree. That's more the frustrating thing. It's not even necessarily like it's what they present it and how they present it in terms of telling us. And I mean, like, they can do it properly if they want to. I feel like they did that last season when they didn't send anyone home for like 6 episodes because everyone was like, quote unquote, doing so well. Like, they have the ability to do it if they want to. I just think, like, just don't bullshit the audience. That's my bigger issue. But other than that, I thought this was a really great episode. A lot of fun came from it. And very excited to see what happens next week. We're going to take a quick commercial break, but when we come back, we're going to start getting into everything from Real Housewives this week. Don't go away.
Well, hello, friends. I'm your pal in the mainstream media.
And I'm the Riz.
And, Riz, it takes years of strenuous, dedicated training before you're worthy to step inside a professional wrestling ring. But it takes even more time to develop complex, highly astute opinions about professional wrestling. Am I right?
That is correct.
Yes.
And you know where we can find that?
Yes.
On the Wrestling Mayhem.
That's right.
Sidekick Media Services. We are your sidekick in business for social media, video production, and more. Find out more at sidekickmediaservices.com.
Welcome back to A Gay and His Enby. Let's get into our Bravo section for the rest of this episode. We've got Salt Lake City up first, the second part of our reunion this season. Oh boy.
This was, I know I was saying last week I don't think it needed to be 3 parts.
You were right.
I still don't think it needed to be 3 parts. There were also, I think, a lot of stuff that was kind of left on the cutting room floor, I feel. Like, we didn't get into in depth with certain people that I feel in, like, their sort of personal story of the season. Maybe it's because they didn't have one that was important enough. And now that I think about it, maybe the season revolved way too much around Jen.
Yeah.
To where, like, and particularly with Jen not being there at this reunion, it was like, what are we going to talk about other than Jen going to prison?
Yeah. I mean, and they did spend quite a bit of time this reunion talking about that.
Yeah. So we come back from the sort of cliffhanger of when they're talking about the black eye, and Angie talks about that she had heard rumors about Heather and Jen, like, oh, do you think they're in like a sexual relationship? I feel like this was like such conjecture that it was like,
yeah. And honestly, I'm just tired of people like dangling the scandal of homosexuality
sure,
over people and using that as fodder to gain more viewership. It was a dull season, guys. We don't need to throw that in there.
I mean, like that was it was kind of a really weak cliffhanger because they were just like, I heard these rumors. I mean, I never did anything with Jen. Okay, let's move on. Like, it was.
Yeah, it was.
And it got, the tail end of the eye stuff, and we talked about Heather feeling upset about blacking out and sort of feeling regret, and she said like she felt like she deserved it and didn't, so that's why she didn't pursue answers further. And then it was just like, it's like, oh, that's, we're sorry to hear that you went through Andy basically saying, we're sorry we hear that you went through this. We'll be right back. And then just this like juxtaposition of like Heather crying and dabbing her tears away as Meredith and Angie H try to like comfort her. And then on the other side of the couch, it's just Angie K. Hey, we should all take a selfie together. Yeah, let's get a selfie.
And then that entire couch getting up and clustering and taking a cute
as
selfie.
Heather's just like, oh my life. It was like, what is happening here? They come back and they get more now we get more in depthly into this Heather Whitney drama from the season and sort of where their rift happened and what caused it. And they talked to Whitney about sort of her healing journey and
Hilling. HILL
healing journey, and the trauma that she experienced as a young child, and her coming to terms with that. And she was saying that she felt like she was being questioned about it by her cast members. And then we get into sort of the discussion of this fight that happened after the big fight in Arizona, where Whitney brings up the rumors in the first place, but she brings up the fight that happened the day after at dinner, where Heather and Whitney kind of go into it, of Heather saying you made this about yourself, etc. Now, what I will say, I think Heather was very crass in how she said all this stuff, and yes, she sounded very cruel in the just like, we talked all about your childhood trauma, etc. I think the point that Heather was trying to make in that conversation was like, I told you that you shouldn't bring up the Lisa rumors in this way, and then you got really drunk that night, and then basically torpedoed this whole vacation by like bringing up these rumors in the way that you did. I think that was what her point was. She did not say it in the proper way, and in a way where even when I was watching it, was like, okay, Heather, you need to stop talking because you're sounding like really insensitive.
Yeah, Heather I have always loved Heather in the past. And this season, I get a weird, I don't like her.
Well, I don't like it.
I don't like it at all. Like, I mean, maybe it's just because her last name is Gay. I don't know. Maybe I'm just that easy to get on your side. But like, I just am really frustrated to see her act like this. And sure, does Whitney tend to have a woe is me sort of attitude and go on a little bit longer than need be on whining about her own things? Yes. And I think that's exacerbated by the fact that she does have a higher pitch and a little bit late nasally voice, so it is a little bit more grating.
And she said herself at this reunion that she doesn't always like that. She calls Heather a master debater and says that it's hard to get your message out in that way.
Yeah, I've been in those situations where you just have to like you can't get out what you need to say, and you just feel like overwhelmed with trying to argue, and then being drunk on top of that is just like, of course things went the way that they went. But like, I don't know. I'm just frustrated.
And then even like Heather admitting at one, like they bring up the question of like, is the issue, some of Whitney's resentment of the fact that you hold Jen to a different standard, in the sense that you still are willing to be friends with Jen after all the more egregious stuff that Jen has done to your trust and your friendship. And Heather's just like, yes, I definitely hold Jen to a lower standard. And it's just like part of me is like, okay, I'm glad you're admitting to it, but it's like the way she's just like you talked about it last week, of her just acceptance of how Jen treats her and just being like, yes, that's what I do. It's like,
okay,
that doesn't make it right.
But like, can we delve into how that's fucked up? Like I get that you have owned that you do that, but you have not accepted the fact that that is not okay.
And Lisa brings up more text messages. She literally at one point has like a pamphlet. We don't see the insides of it, but she just like flips through it. But we see some of the text messages on screen where Jen's just trashing Heather all the time. And again, it's just like, I think Heather at one point says, so Jen's a horrible person. What do you guys want me to do? It's like, stand up for yourself. Like, be willing to like sort of full throatedly with your heart say this is wrong. I agree in the sense that it's like, I don't think Whitney offenses and calling and wanting a friendship break, which that part is just like so annoying to me, of like, well, you never told me there was a friendship break. It's stupid. It's really dumb. But like,
also, can we talk about how Heather found out about that through Jen, who twisted what Whitney said in the first place?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, and Lisa brings up that it was like Jen deflecting in that moment, because that was also the day that like Jen and Heather got into that fight at lunch about sort of Jen being a terrible friend.
Yeah, it was a pointed manipulation at this point. I don't assume anything good about Jen, because like, no, none of it. No, like,
a good motto is right now, just don't trust Jen Shaw.
Yeah. Don't give her your email address and just don't trust her in general.
keep your social security number and you'll be fine. But like, and Heather also brings up that like she was also going through a lot at the time. I mean, she revealed that she's getting sued by the Church of Latter-day Saints for her book, which
that has to be daunting.
Yeah.
Like, I can't imagine an entire religion suing me. What? What?
But I think where I kind of like am on nobody's side in this regard, I'm a little more on Whitney's side now after this reunion, because I think Heather is just like being either glib or, you know, just not willing to actually listen in this regard. But like, so they break for lunch at this point, and then they go back to their trailers. And Whitney and Lisa are eating lunch, discussing it. And Whitney's just like, she's doing it. She's being a victim. She's, you know, all this stuff. She's passing blame, and she's like making it seem like she was the one that was just being attacked or whatever. And it's like, yes, Whitney, you're correct. You're also describing everyone on this cast. I would say almost everyone in this cast in certain like plays a certain level of like victimhood. And when I say for example, in Whitney's case, I'm not even talking about in the sense of her trauma. I think that's I think for seasons now, Whitney's like talked about like, I'm not anyone's doormat. They're manipulating me to cause drama. And it's like, no, they're not. Like, it was the same frustration I had last season with the whole did Meredith call the feds on Jen thing, where Whitney tried to pass the buck on Lisa and be like, Lisa made me question. It's like, no, she didn't. Like,
To be fair, Lisa did plant that idea. Maybe it wasn't on purpose. I don't think it was. I think it was an innocent musing out loud.
I think
but
the
that
metaphor
is what planted that idea into Whitney's head that Whitney then picked up and ran with.
Whitney's metaphor last season was like, Lisa has the baton and I'm willing to grab and take it. It's like, okay, but that's on you. Like, I don't like, Lisa can't force you to.
Right.
Lisa's not holding a gun to your head.
Right.
And that's where I get frustrated with her. But it's like,
I do feel like there is a difference though between the rest of the cast claiming victimhood and things of that nature, and what Heather is doing, because I feel like everyone else is, at least if you're looking from their point of view, that claim makes sense.
Sure. Yeah,
I can't see where Heather is the victim in this.
Not
in
terms of the dynamic with Whitney, I would say definitely. Not in terms of her dynamic with Whitney. I think
I would say even with the rest of the cast. I think with Jen, yes.
Sure.
But she tries to turn around and take the vulnerability and the frustration that she has with Jen treating her like that
and passes it off
to the rest of the cast.
100%.
I don't know if manipulates the right word, but she twists facts to make herself feel like the victim, whereas everyone else is just seeing things from a different point of view.
Yeah, I agree.
I think there's a fundamental difference there.
So they come back with the segment with the husbands. There wasn't much to talk about with this husband segment. Only thing I liked from this husband, honestly, I am becoming a fan of John Barlow. I kind of like how he stood up for himself and Lisa and like and kind of called out Meredith and Seth of being like, you didn't have to make those jokes behind our back. Like, particularly the jokes about me. Like, I didn't do anything to you, Meredith.
Yeah.
Respectfully. So like, and kind of forced, because Meredith all the season has been playing this game of like, well, I wasn't saying things, but when you look, and they were making jokes about Lisa and John's business, and they were doing it.
Yes, but there is a difference between I get that they're on camera and it is being broadcast to the world, but there is a difference between making jokes in the quote unquote privacy of your own home with your husband and broadcasting those things to other people. The only time I've disagreed with Lisa in recent history has been when she tried to go after Seth and say, Seth, you should have stood up for me against your wife. No, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's my spouse. I'm ride or die with my spouse.
Yeah.
And behind closed doors, when there's no cameras, I might tell her that that was inappropriate and that she needs to address that with you again off camera before this airs. But there is no way that I am going to side with another woman against my wife on national television.
No,
absolutely not.
I think the reason I like this though is that I think for a lot of the time on Salt Lake throughout the 3 seasons, John Barlow's kind of portrayed as this kind of like, to be crass about it, kind of portrayed as Lisa's bitch. Like that Lisa guides him around and that. And I thought he kind of in this moment like showed that he is an equal part in this relationship. And I think they're kind of, I appreciate their relationship more than anyone in this group in terms of the marriages. I think they have a good dynamic, and it's, you know, it was good to see him sort of stand up in that moment. But that was really the only thing from the husband segment. There was talk about the bathtub scene. Don't care.
Don't care.
Don't really care. But then they come back, and then we get into this full Jen talk. This is the big stretch of everyone of talking about Jen pleading guilty and everything that sort of came from that. And then this is where we get kind of the spicier moment of the whole reunion, which is between Meredith and Andy. Because Andy is asking Meredith about this sort of like, why did you flip on, in terms of now being so supportive of Jen after all these years, and especially what happened last season. Like, you seem to sort of just completely do a 180 and we don't really know why. And while I didn't understand Meredith being like, well, I have to wait till the sentencing in certain respects to like be as vociferous and like my feeling upset about this, I didn't really understand that. She's been found guilty by this point. But she brings up the fact that part of it is because that she had gotten information even before any of the other women did that Jen had attempted suicide. And that because of her personal history, we saw on the show with her nephew who had attempted and sort of, and which what I was saying earlier, I was surprised that they didn't go into more depth with that on the reunion. But anyways, and Meredith says like, that's a line where it's just like, I've put everything aside and I say, I'm not going to, you know, attack this woman. And I got her point. I actually think, and a lot of people were like, Andy was kind of like even pushing it, because Andy just kept kind of being like, really? Like, you have nothing to say about her going to jail and you don't have, like, you know. And I was like, I kind of am more on Meredith's side in that regard, because it is a tricky subject. I mean, it's been tricky the whole season in the way that Jen's talked about it. You know, we've sort of talked about how it, you know, her bringing this up in the way that she has on the show, it's been a difficult thing for the women to sort of deal with, because it's like, you can't, it's a terrible subject.
Right. As someone who has been in that position twice, no. Sorry. You signed up for this to be like, not to be like completely calloused, but you signed up to have your life portrayed on television. You used your suicide attempt as a weapon in an argument.
Yeah, that's what it really felt like.
And now you're expecting people to use silk white gloves when handling you. Absolutely not. At the end of the day, you frauded, I don't know how many people, a bunch of people.
For millions and millions of dollars.
For millions and millions of dollars. And like, you literally like decimated the lives of so many people. And I'm not saying that you deserve to have ever been in that mental place. Nobody deserves to be there. But when you take that and then turn it around and weaponize it, like you have weaponized everything else for the last 3 seasons.
Which she's one to do, because she's very, like, the way, especially that first season, she's very, like, just willing to throw anything at a wall in which to get out of a conversation. And that's not to say that any of that is fake or that it's like, it's legitimate. And what I'm saying is also from like, I understand from Meredith's perspective. From an outside person, it's very hard when someone throws something out like that to, sort of desensitize and look at it objectively.
But here's the thing.
What I will say is that I did not like Meredith in this conversation saying, I will always fight for the underdog. Referring to Jen as the underdog in this story
Absolutely
is ridiculous. Not. She defrauded elderly people she's not the underdog. Like when you look at the interviews on GMA of the women that she has hurt from this scheme, it's like, no, those are the underdog.
Right.
Those are the people that got taken advantage of. That's where I think Andy's frustration, I understand, because it's just like, we're not talking about a friendship being hurt, or we're not talking about even like things like infidelity, or like we're talking about a pretty serious crime.
Yeah.
And like, you're just kind of unfazed by it. And Lisa and Meredith get into it about like, you were in a bubble bath last season, like kind of relishing in it and like being like, well, I wasn't surprised that Jen got arrested.
She was saying that I don't know if she actually said she was in shock at that moment and that's why she was behaving that way, but she kind of alluded to that.
She tries to say that she wasn't gloating and that there was other stuff in her life where it was more her focus.
Whatever.
I feel like Meredith in this regard, just referring to her as the underdog just really put a bad taste in my mouth because it's like, really, girl. And then they get into more sort of like, they talk about why they think Jen pled guilty after all this time. And they talk about, Heather brings up the sort of like, they felt like the sort of money of like having to defend themselves in court was like strangling them and how it was costing them so much. And that's why maybe her and Coach Shaw came to that decision.
And then also that they have been soliciting from other families in Salt Lake, including the cast.
Well, and that the only cast member that gave them money was
Angie
H. Which like Whitney then puts two and two together and says, is that why Jen dropped the whole Shaw exposed stuff that happened? Lisa said that she wanted to, but that her lawyers advised her that it wouldn't be a smart move.
And Heather said something similar.
Yeah, she was like, I think she said I wasn't going to put my family involved in it because of like the finances and all that stuff. And also to the other thing of like Meredith calling Jen the underdog, and then you had Heather being asked about like, why didn't you go harder on Jen? Like she said that it would be like, I'm not going to say I hate you and like don't be my friend anymore or whatever, because just to virtue signal to the world. And it's just like,
I know I said this to you at the time, but anytime somebody says virtue signal, it infuriates me.
This is like that. Their dialogue is almost worse than the sort of, and we've talked about how it's not the same thing about what happened with Jen and what happened with Erica on Beverly Hills.
Right.
But like the way the women like got criticized for not sort of going harder on Erica, like this is much worse, I think. Not just in terms of crime, but in terms of like the defense of why they're not going against this person.
Well, and the fact that the actual perpetrator was on the cast.
Yeah.
Like, say what you will, nobody has been able to prove that Erica actually had a hand in what Tom Girardi and his law firm were doing. Like, so why are we attacking her?
Sure.
Like, we should have been attacking Jen Shaw.
Right.
Like, why were we not attacking Jen Shaw?
And then like they asked Lisa about, and Lisa starts crying on like the spot, and Heather rolls her eyes, which I was like, yes, Heather. That was the one time I'm like, as much as I'm a big Lisa Barlow fan.
Also, she was not crying. There were no tears.
There were no tears. And then afterwards, she's just like, why am I so emotional? Aren't you sad? Whitney, aren't you sad? Oh my God. It was just like, this is how this reunion's ending. This is where I was like, we had this discussion when they had filmed the reunion about like whether Jen should have gone or they should have made Jen go or something. I think she needed to be there at this reunion, watching it all back, because it's so awkward talking around her.
Well, but according to Andy, she was invited to be at the reunion, and she declined.
It's and then so this like weird awkward ending of the reunion where like Heather's still crying about everything that's happened and stuff like that, and then Andy goes around to basically ask what's your one big regret from the season, and Heather says, I regret not going immediately to bed and in San Diego, and instead of so I wouldn't have blacked out in that. And Whitney's just like, okay, like, and Whitney then later goes like, I thought you were gonna say the stuff with our friendship, but okay, like it was so awkward. It was like, and then to make it more. We talked last week of how Andy just seemed over it this reunion, and he's just like, they get the champagne out, and he's just like, well, ladies, I think we've all learned a lot, and I think you've all had a lot going on, and it's made for a great season. Go Jazz! They're all like, go Jazz! Like
this just reiterates the theory that this is like the meta season, like this is the meta franchise of the Housewives. It feels, and we have said this for years, that Salt Lake City feels like a parody of Housewives.
Yeah.
It feels like these people came on here knowing what Housewives was and performing Housewives. It doesn't feel like people are just being people. It feels fake.
Yeah.
It has felt that way from the beginning.
Oh, and I forgot to mention they also bring out a birthday cake at the end for Lisa and Meredith, and then they awkwardly try to sing happy birthday.
Jeez.
That was a way to end this season. But apparently they're going right into filming in like a week or so.
Yeah.
So, and there's rumors that Mary Cosby's coming back as a friend.
Well, and they've been doing that with Salt Lake City. Usually they get a down period between, and all the other franchises, they do it that way. But on this one, for the last 3, actually, I think every season except for between the first and second,
they've gone right into filming.
I
think particularly last season because they wanted to get all of the Jen stuff. Mm-hmm. But like,
and then they ended it so early. It's like, what are we doing?
I don't know if it needed to film this quickly. But let's get into the other big well, we have 2 more, but this was a lot of big discussion online from this past episode going on to outside of even the show, Real Housewives of Potomac, and everything.
Honestly, it's my favorite thing on TV right now.
Potomac is really great. And we get to sort of this stuff with now leading into Robin's wedding, and Giselle planning her bachelorette party. We get with the wedding dress shopping with Robin, which literally, like, Ashley literally pops in to just be like, hey, you look pretty, Robin, and then just immediately drops the tea about me and Wendy and is like, bye.
She walks in, goes, oh, that's pretty, and then Robin goes, yeah, I really like it. I'm going to go change into something else. Robin walks away. She goes, oh, by the way, Giselle, here's these rumors. I'm leaving now. Bye.
Yeah. And
what?
All this talk about what happened at the end of the trip in Mexico and about how Mia being interested in Wendy's vagina. The way that Giselle kept saying the word vagina was like, she was just savoring every syllable. And
it sounds like a Cupcake remix.
She literally said at one point in her confessional, like, I'm going to have to talk to Mia about this before I go and tell everyone. Because I am going to tell everyone. I was like, my God, Giselle.
At least she's honest.
But then, like, then Giselle and Robin get to talking, and Robin still hasn't even told her mom about the wedding.
Oh, geez.
Like, what is this wedding? What are they doing? None of this makes sense. I understand why this would be confusing and people would cast doubt on this. And then they talk about the party, and Robin says she obviously doesn't want Karen there for obvious reasons from what happened in Mexico, and then says that she's also not inviting Wendy, even after her and Wendy seemingly made up, because Wendy was laughing too much at the table when Karen was
and then they did a flashback to that, and it's like, she was mostly laughing at the ridiculousness of what Karen was saying. She wasn't.
Yeah,
she wasn't.
And also, everyone else at the table was laughing as well. I don't understand. Like, it just seemed like, again, it felt like a concerted effort. And that's where it's like, it just feels like they're trying to ice out Wendy for no reason.
Yeah.
And that's where it's frustrating. So, and then Ashley literally goes, not in the same day, but like drops this tea at the wedding dress shopping, and then Karen and Wendy are having lunch at one point, and she FaceTimes in to just be like, oh, so you guys, by the way, you guys aren't invited and you're not in the group chat. Like, Ashley, this whole like season, just like a little mouse, just coming into situations and dropping tea and like starting drama, and like it's like,
because they get paid per day of filming.
That's a good point. That's a fair point. Ashley just wants to get in there as much as possible.
Yep.
There was also, so Mia and Giselle were at Mia's house to plan the bachelorette party.
Well, wait, they might get paid per episode. I don't know. Whatever.
Either way, she's gonna get that money. But they're talking about, Giselle's like, what happened in Mexico with you and Wendy, and Mia's implying that kind of Wendy was sort of initiating, I feel, and like that, oh, you clearly wanted some, and that's why you were sort of like angry. I don't believe that. In what world is Mia not the one that coming on in this scenario?
Right.
Like, it's obvious to me.
I'm sorry. You played spelunking with Jacqueline in a flashlight, and you expect us to believe you weren't trying to spelunk in the other vagina cave?
She's made it known, and good on her, but like, I just think it's odd. And yeah, Giselle is also just prying for any tea that she can get. So Wendy and Karen, they're obviously not invited. Wendy's doing like stuff on MSNBC while this is happening. Karen's in a meeting for her 4-wick
holiday exclusive.
Which, did you look up that because it's now on sale? Do you know how much that candle is?
No, but it's probably exorbitant.
$130
for wax and a piece of string.
4 pieces. Well, is it?
Yeah, it's 4 pieces of string.
Okay, but like, and also I think it said exclusive edition, but it was spelled ADDITI, like edition. Oh, Karen.
Oh, good Lord.
I love you. You're the grand dame, but like, girl, get it together. So then they're getting on the party bus to go to Robin's bachelorette party. Ashley and Mia being in the same matching outfits, the matching bodysuits with the like. I don't know if Ashley just being like, only 2 hoes would think of this same outfit, because this is some hoish behavior. I don't know why I always love it when housewives wear the same stuff. This has happened, I feel, multiple times across different franchises.
Oh yeah,
particularly on Beverly Hills, it happens a lot. So they go on the party bus. There was also a little thing where Charisse was like in her confessional being upset that she wasn't planning it, which like, okay.
Girl, why would you be planning it? Her bestie is Giselle. If anybody, it should have been Giselle. And Giselle didn't even plan this. So you're like third in line to be upset about this.
Well, and I think she was maybe more upset that Mia was like the co-host, but like Mia was only the co-host because she could get her into the strip club.
Right.
Because that was her place of business. I mean, not specifically this one, but like that was her forte.
She got connections.
She made sure to go to a place that had steak and lobster, which was a big thing last season. Mia made it clear. I did not go to work in a strip club. I worked at a gentleman's club that served steak and lobster.
Exactly.
Which had strippers as well. But that's fine.
Entertainers.
Yes. So they get to the club. They're eating. They're seeing the naked. There's like, I don't know what this, like they were in like what looked like like fish tanks. Like it was
there were fish tanks where they were taking showers, and then there were girls in cages, and then it
was a lot.
Girls up on like platforms, and it was like, girl.
And we said, girl. No, but, and then so they're starting to have discussions. Ashley gets asked about how the divorce is going with her and Michael, and I did not understand this, but like Ashley being like, I mean, we're getting along a little bit more. Like we're getting into a better place, and she was like, she's doing the whole coy, like, you know, oh, I don't know what to say, and it's just like, girl, get. Literally, what did Candace say? Candace said, if I had a chance to leave Gollum and take half his money, where's the train I want to get to it?
This was a similar reaction as to what Utica had when she was asked by Rue whether she smoked pot, and she was like, no, but yeah, but it was very much that,
almost implying that she might want to get back with Michael, which is just like,
after everything you have been through with this man, throw him to the curb.
I was so hopeful going into the season that Ashley would just like wise up and have the plan that she had been devising for all these years to just like take his money.
And then she said something about him dating women, and I'm like, women. That man is on Grindr.
Where is Juan Dixon? Check. We need to.
Who has eyes on Juan?
All these talk about Juan's DMs over the weekend. Let's talk about these.
that blonde girl that looks like Karen turns around and it's Michael Darby.
Oh my God,
Michaela Darby.
Crazier things would have happened. But like Ashley's like, oh yeah, he's, I'm not dating right now because he says he's not dating. And Candace is just like, well, Chris saw him with a woman of the W. Like,
a woman.
And Candace, as much as she's had her issues with that, and I guess that they're at this point where they're trying to repair it again for the fourth time. Like Candace, I think, is doing that's what I would want out of a friend, to be like, girls, he's moved on. Like, and Ashley's upset about it and is like, you know what? I need to move on from Michael.
Right.
Hopefully she finally does it. And then we get to why we're all here in the first place, to talk about Karen more, particularly Charisse.
Jeez.
And Charisse starts going off on Karen that like, I've kept all her secrets, which like, isn't this why you guys are having issue in the first place?
Aren't you the one who brought up Blue Eyes at the first reunion for this show?
Yeah, it's like, what are we talking about? But like, so, and then she starts throwing out more accusations. She says that Karen likes to get drunk and just like be wild, that she fucked someone in a bathroom, like fucked a worker
like a server
in a bathroom, which I don't believe. I like, maybe I have rose-colored glasses about Karen Huger, and yes, there are people on reality TV that act a certain way and they're completely different. But like,
Karen Huger is a pillow princess. There is no way she is going into some nasty bathroom at a restaurant.
Because if it's a server
and getting her back blown out.
If it's a server, I can't think they would be more than like 40 years old.
Oh, maybe it's Jax Taylor from Vanderpump
That would be
Rules.
the only one that would make sense. That would be the only one that would make sense. But like, they keep implying throughout, like, oh, Juan wouldn't want to. Like, they keep using Karen's age of being 59 as like, oh, Juan wouldn't want to have sex with you, and etc. And it's like, but she's just having sex with a random person in a bathroom.
Also, isn't Robin in her late 40s?
Giselle's in her early 50s. Like,
so I mean, it's not that far off. At a certain point, age does become just a number.
Yeah, it's I don't like the age shaming, or the ageism, as Karen learned for that one reunion. And then then they start bringing up the stuff about how, like, because Blue Eyes allegedly is Karen's driver, and they're like, well, no, he's a hotel manager. He's not actually Karen's driver, and that Karen was saying that she needed a driver because she had gotten her license suspended, basically implying that like because she's a drunk that she like got her license suspended. It's just I don't know. This feels like topics that like you gossiping with your other friends about this is just feels like egg on your face more than anything.
Yeah.
But so that ends the episode. We got the finale next week with Candace's release party and all that stuff. But we also got to talk about everything that's been happening with the Potomac world after this episode aired, because then talk about egg on their face. People are pissed about.
Rightfully so.
I'm fully with them. So they were all in the last week. If you're on TikTok and social media, there was this guy who does like rumor blogs and stuff like that. Pretty credible, I would say, for Housewives stuff, who said that he had gotten DMs from a woman who was in communication with Juan Dixon. That she claims they had a relationship, etc. She had a hotel receipt with his name on it, or an invoice with his name on it. And it seemed somewhat credible, but you never know. People make shit up. I don't, to a certain account. But then Robin goes on her Reasonably Shady podcast with Giselle after the reunion has already been filmed, by the way. They filmed it like a week or two ago. And basically is like, this actually happened. But claims that, and now she basically says it happened, but says, if you want the full story, go to subscribe to our Patreon.
Right.
Which was even the more frustrating part of just like, you're putting that shit behind a paywall that you're not even talking about on the show. But
so not only did you take money out of Bravo's pocket, but then you made sure to line your own pockets by putting it behind a paywall.
Right. And so basically what she says is that, Juan, yes, was in communications with a woman, which he shouldn't have done, but that it didn't go anywhere sexual, and it wasn't. And the only reason that his name is on a hotel invoice is because she was flying in and asked him that she needed a hotel to stay in, and that he basically walked in, put his credit card down, charged for it, and then left.
Which doesn't make sense. Why would you do that?
Juan is not an idiot, first off. Like, shit like that would show up on his credit card statement and I would have questions. So he's not an idiot. I said it online. This was very much like that one season when Ashley was trying to convince everyone. Yeah, Michael went up to the hotel room with that woman, but he says they didn't do anything, and I believe him. And they're all just
even though she had a picture of him in his boxers
and
that she posted online.
And they're just like, really, girl? Like, what? Like, really? But that's what Robin claims, which is so frustrating, particularly the hypocrisy element in multitude levels across this group. First, the hypocrisy of Robin to couple episodes criticize Karen and say, well, all of our life gets scrutinized and we're, everything gets put under a microscope. So you're not allowed to skirt conversations and you're not allowed to say, we can't talk about this, or I'm not going to talk about this.
Also, to be fair, it's not like Ashley and Giselle didn't know about this. They knew about this happening before filming.
Definitely. And because the woman contacted Giselle. And so they knew about this. And that's where Chris is also frustrated, and Candace as well. And Chris has a great point, and I'm fully with Chris on this, which is just like, you're making up bullshit about me all season long, and we're running with the storyline all season long, but you're not going to talk about your real shit. And he says he's not as frustrated with Robin as he is with Giselle,
which is fair. I understand why Robin wouldn't bring it up.
I don't agree. Here's why. She says this was this was during COVID. This was a tumultuous thing in our relationship. It's why we delayed the wedding. There is no reason why she can't talk about that. And not in a way to throw Juan under the bus or not to relitigate it or whatever, but you should be able to tell us this happened and we got past it.
I can understand, again, why she wouldn't want to bring that up on the show, and why I think it is valid to not bring that up on the show, because Juan already doesn't like being on camera.
There's that.
But he didn't sign up for this show. She did. And he's put up with a lot being on this show, which all the husbands always do, right? They put up with a lot. I would argue that Chris has probably put up with more than most.
Sure.
But unless what you're doing is happening on camera, like what was happening with Michael Darby, the husband shit kind of needs to not be on the show. Unless it is brought in by someone else. Then we can talk about it. Then it can be a thing.
Well,
but nobody brought up Robin's thing, and nobody that knew about it was motivated to.
But that's the thing. Like she says as well, I thought somebody else was going to bring this up on the season, so it didn't come up because no one else brought it up. But it implied, like Carlos King talked about, he's a former producer for Atlanta and Jersey, and he has his own podcast. And he talked about this, which is just like, this show is now all of you guys just going around and trying to spread rumors about another person and take down another person. And like, you're seeing it with Karen, and you're seeing it with Candace, and you're seeing it with like, there's so much calculatedness that we're the point of Housewives is to see your real lives and to see things naturally flow as they may. Not to, the fact that Robin, in her own words, expected somebody to bring this up to try to take her down is like that's in itself a problem. That's the expectation of this group of people, of this franchise, instead of you guys just living your lives and things naturally happening as the way they would naturally happen.
Sure, but if this happened between filming seasons, I sure as hell wouldn't bring it up.
But I mean, people have made the point of like, look at someone like, and obviously their relationship is dead now, but like, look at what Shannon Bodor did on OC and her openness in terms of her issues with David. I don't know.
Yes, but I feel like that's very different. David was abusive. This was not a disagreement about where the line is in terms of fidelity. In terms of Shannon and David, he was an abusive asshole.
Sure.
And he was literally putting her in danger. And that is very different than what is happening here on Potomac. Yeah. Like, I feel like Robin, if she doesn't want to bring that up, especially if bringing that up on camera is going to jeopardize them even being able to move forward and getting married, I understand why she didn't bring it up. Now, she was expecting someone else to, because everybody tells each other's shit on this show.
Sure. But in fairness, I think there's also a particular group within the group that is particular with that and avoiding their issue. I shouldn't even say a group. Giselle. Giselle has been criticized for a couple of seasons now of not showing her full spectrum of her life, not showing the sort of grittier parts of it, not showing the nastier parts of it, but then critiquing everybody else and focusing on exposing everybody else.
Right.
And that is an issue.
But that can't be used to then criticize Robin for Giselle's actions.
Sure. What we will agree in criticizing Robin for is putting that shit behind a paywall and,
absolutely,
and costing Bravo their money when you had already filmed a reunion. Because you, like, particularly after already filming a reunion. It should have
come up at the reunion.
That's like, I think Ray Sani, who I follow, said it best, and it was like, that's coward shit.
Even if it was even if there was no details shared, like, obviously we don't know if it's touched on at the reunion, but I guarantee you it doesn't.
But the topic generally of Juan and Robin's, like, whether or not there is infidelity, is naturally going to come up at the reunion because of the Karen stuff with what happened sort of in the last couple episodes. That's naturally going to come up. So if they don't mention this, that's a problem.
Right. And it's not like you're branding Juan as something he wasn't previously. That's why they got divorced.
Literally. Like, Ashley has literally brought it up in past seasons that Juan may have been cheating, like, at certain points. So it's like,
it should have come up at the reunion, and she could have protected Juan and said, there was a moment where I thought maybe there could be some cheating happening, and we discussed it, and I believe him when he tells me he didn't, and we've moved past it.
Yeah.
Even if that's as general as we got, and we didn't get into the yes things that are said online are validated. Yes, this woman from Canada was flown in and paid for her. Even if we didn't go through all of that, she could have at least owned up to the fact that, yes, that had happened at some point. I'm not going into details because that is my husband, but, like, we at least need some validation of the fact that we're not crazy.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so that's, not good. But other than that, this episode of Potomac was great, and I'm excited for the finale. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and then when we come back, we are going to be talking Real Housewives of Miami this week. Don't go anywhere.
Well, hello, friends. I'm your pal in the mainstream media.
And I'm the Riz.
And, Riz, it takes years of strenuous, dedicated training before you're worthy to step inside a professional wrestling ring. But it takes even more time to develop complex, highly astute opinions about professional wrestling. Am I right?
That is correct.
Yes.
And you know where we can find that?
Yes.
On the Wrestling Mayhem.
That's right.
Sidekick Media Services. We are your sidekick in business for social media, video production, and more. Find out more at sidekickmediaservices.com.
Welcome back once again to A Gay and His Enby. We are getting into episode 12 of season 5 of Real Housewives of Miami.
Another really fun episode. Again, I think this is one of my favorite franchises. This one is sort of, we get a lot of Alexia and Nicole sort of finally getting things to come to a head. There have been things kind of bubbling throughout the season. But things kind of get to a real confrontational point because Alexia is upset of what happened at her house with the lawyers, which was crazy. But she thinks that Nicole was very unprofessional in how she acted. I found it really odd that she's like, she was particularly offended about the whole going into her purse, pulling out her black Amex and putting it in his lap and saying, "I'll pay." And she describes it as like, that's something you would do to like a prostitute. I haven't been to a lot of like strip clubs or like different that's
not that strippers are prostitutes, but I think I get what you mean.
I think I misconstrued. I think she said strip club actually, but like, do they use cards? I was always
where are they keeping the square?
Like, is it just like they're upside down doing the backwards hanging motion and just pull out the square and just like swipe?
And they like, oh, sorry, I'm not in a connection in this spot. Let me move over a little bit so the Wi-Fi is better. What?
Like, that metaphor didn't work. Those are the things where Alexia will say some things where it's just like, girl, I can't help but laugh.
I got really frustrated with that point as well because it was really frustrating that she literally calls this lawyer to the house to use as a prop.
Sure.
And then gets mad when other people also use him as a prop.
Well, my thing too, and so they will move a little bit in the episode because they they have what they're calling a gringo dinner where they basically, the husbands who are white, they all have like a group quadruple date together. And Alexia gets into it with Nicole about this. And my thing was like, you were disrespectful in my home, but like, everyone was fighting in your home, including yourself. To me, I meet energy with energy, and like,
I'm not going to sit there and be demure when you're screaming.
Yeah, and she was getting into it with Adriana about their stuff. Like, it was like, this was an environment where everyone was getting heated, so like, why not join in?
Yeah,
and they get into it at the dinner, and like, then it transitions to like Anthony speaking up for Nicole's behalf, and then Todd gets in and starts arguing with Anthony, and they start arguing about like Todd argues with him about his law practice and stuff like that. Anthony is like, we talked about it before, he is real housewife material. He is so shady.
Anthony is
Nicole's
husband. I was really frustrated with Todd, actually. With the framing of his arguments was very much, it was very, I won't say gaslighty because I feel like that word is overused, but it was very manipulative in the way that he was arguing and was very disingenuous. He kept moving the goalpost.
Sure.
Like, he kept,
it was weird
really
to see Todd in
manipulative argument.
It was weird to see Todd in this fight. Like, we saw him last season get into it with Peter, Alexi's other son, and I was more on Todd's side in that argument of like, sort of the way that Peter had been acting. and kind of rooted for him in that. This just seemed like so weird and just like but Anthony's like sort of like, I find it charming, but I can understand why people would be like, think he was like obnoxious or whatever, but just him be like, do you want me to send the lawyer flowers? Do you want me to send him chocolates?
Like, well, yeah, he doesn't need your Godivas. Well, I wasn't going to send him Godivas.
That was my favorite part. No, I'm going to send him like good shit. Like Anthony.
Like, of course you would, you cheapskate.
Anthony,
What?
I find Anthony so funny. Like, and I can understand why, you know, because he has said stuff about like Larsa in like dinners about her like sleeping around and stuff like that. And yes, like but like, I don't know. I love it. I love him and Nicole. I think they're an interesting relationship.
I also just, while we're on the subject of husbands, I get really irritated with the narrative that husbands should stay out of housewife arguments because, number one, it's rooted in misogyny, right?
Sure.
It's like, oh, a man can't argue with a woman as long as he's like not behaving in a misogynistic way. I don't see a problem with him jumping in to defend his wife.
Well, I get frustrated a lot this season with Chris. Like people throw that at Chris sometimes on Twitter, and I'm like, if Chris is being dragged into this
in Potomac,
I should clarify. If Chris is being dragged into this, then he has every right to fucking say what he wants.
Especially because all the lies and stuff are about Chris.
Yeah, but so then Nicole and Alexia later in the episode then get together for dinner and sort of hash it out, which like. We were annoyed by this. I feel like Nicole came into the dinner honestly, and Alexia of all people, policing anyone on how to apologize is crazy to me.
I am an autistic person.
Yeah.
And when I am giving an apology, and I'm not saying that Nicole is autistic, but it is something that I share with her. I need to explain how I reached a certain place.
Yeah.
So that when you look at me, you see, oh, I can understand how this person got there. This is not an echo of their character. We just interpreted something different, which to me is very important to being able to reestablish trust.
Right.
But Alexia is
she keeps saying like, well, you're adding a but to your apology, or you're basically trying to say it as, and
she said excusing. No, she's not excusing. She's explaining. She's saying, I am sorry, but the reason she wasn't trying to undercut the I'm sorry. She was trying to lead with the I'm sorry.
I think people
say the most important thing of what I'm going to say is the apology.
Yeah, I think people misconstrued the difference between an excuse and an explanation a lot in life, but particularly on Housewives as well. But they end up getting to a conclusion. They want to be friends. They're planning this big trip to the Bahamas, which looks crazy in terms of everything that we're seeing. There was other great stuff on the episode. I thought this episode, like the fighting was fun, but I thought that they had a lot of really poignant moments too, like throughout the episode, which I love.
Especially around Julia trying to find an agency that would not only work with same-sex couples, but also with someone of their age.
Yeah.
Because her and Martina are older. And so they're trying to find one that would be able to give them what they're looking for. And
I found it interesting because she was talking with Adriana about it, and Adriana was like, well, that's ageist, the people that don't. I don't necessarily think in this case is ageist to be like.
I can understand in Julia's case because Julia's 49.
Yes.
But
Martina's
65. She's 15 years older, so 64.
Yeah.
If they were to get an infant,
that would be a problem.
That child would be graduating high school with a parent in their 80s.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's a problem. And you're like intentionally robbing that child of having an adult relationship with their parent. Like, I feel like that is so important for a child to, if there is a healthy relationship, to be able to continue that. And like, obviously tragedy happens. Like, you can lose a parent to disease. You can have a bitter divorce that makes it so where you can't have a relationship.
Right.
You can have abuse. But in a healthy relationship between a parent and a child, you want as much time with that parent. From the child's point of view, you want as much time with that parent as time will allow.
Yeah.
And to consciously make a choice to adopt a child, knowing that you will be in the last, could be couple years of your life, or maybe even
and I think
already gone by the time that your child graduates high school. That's a problem.
And I think adoption agencies more do it in terms of making sure that you can raise a child.
Right.
That
I mean, obviously, yes, that is an issue too.
In that regard. But I also thought it was really poignant her talking. She said that she had particularly wanted a child from Russia because that's her homeland, obviously.
Right. But Russia is really homophobic.
And doesn't allow same-sex couples to adopt, and sort of the frustration of that. And I thought it was also really poignant her talking about the difference of this, in the sense that while she had 3 children, she never had them with somebody who was actually raising them together. Martina came in sort of later in her children's life and didn't start the process with her, and how this hopefully will be something different for her, and how she's excited for it in that regard. I thought was really sweet.
Mm-hmm.
And really just a good poignant moment. I love these really serious moments sometimes where you get to really, love on a housewife. And I think we saw it as well. We complain about Alexia this episode. I really also love the scene with her and any scene with her and Frankie I really love.
Yeah.
I
love seeing her just be such a good mom to him.
Yeah.
She's trying really hard, and you can see how, obviously traumatized she is from his accident.
Yeah. So for context, in the previous seasons of the show, back when it was the original in 2012, her son Frankie was in a car accident. Basically was in a coma at one point. They didn't know if he was going to make it. And obviously was able to make it, has, done the physical therapy, done all that needed to be done, but obviously is not his full self that he once was, in terms of,
has some mental disabilities as a result.
And she talked about it a little bit, sort of in the I remember the early seasons when she was dealing it at very early points, and it was just a real struggle, to sort of get him to where he is now. And they were she's working with this program in Miami that helps these children sort of transition and sort of get more responsibility and be able to function a little bit more in society, for the off chance that, when Alexia isn't around anymore, that they have they're able to take care of themselves. And it was a really just sweet scene. And, I think, Alexia's relationship with her other son, Peter, is kind of scrutinized a lot, and sort of her parenting in that regard, of how she didn't really do the best with him and sort of his actions. And but I think someone who's been through that much trauma, I give them so much grace.
Yeah. And
not just with Frankie, when you look at Alexia's whole life, her 2 marriages, the one ending with her husband going to jail for being basically a drug dealer, and her other husband, ending up killing himself, and then finding out later that he was gay and wasn't able to come to terms with it because he was a politician, and he was, she's been through so freaking much, and it's it's so great to see that relationship sort of be really pure and on display. And then we also get a little bit of stuff with Lisa. There's not too much more information other than what we last saw of Lenny trying to get her out of the house. Essentially, she goes to this strip club with Larsa and Kiki at one point to try to get her mind off things, which seemed like an abandoned strip club. It was there was music and there was house lights, but almost no one was there.
It was just really weird to see this empty room, and then they're sitting at a table, and then this woman in a thong and fishnets walks up to take their order, and it's okay.
And they're just eating chicken fingers and
chicken fingers and chicken sliders, I think.
And then we find out that Lisa's trainer has dropped her because Lenny's hired him to train the mistress.
That's so insulting. I hate that man.
He is the worst. I hate him. But yes, obviously always still rooting for Lisa. And this Bahamas trip looks crazy and insane and chaotic. There's possible injury. There's throwing of drinks. It's going to be amazing. Miami is constantly bringing it, and if you're not watching it, you should be over on Peacock.
All right, we are at that time in the episode where we discuss our tops and bottoms of the week. Eamon, what are you thinking?
My bottom for this week is Robin Dixon. I had to give it to her. Clown behavior, this whole stuff with the podcast. How dare she? How dare she for a multitude of reasons. I don't think she should be fired, as some people are saying. I think we need to have a more nuanced conversation in that regards, but there definitely needs to be something coming her way of that. Like, but she needs to like have some pay drop, because that is, if you know.
Yeah, I mentioned this to you offline, but my thought is she needs to be demoted to friend of, at least for a season. They've done it before.
Yeah.
Vicky Gunvalson got demoted as a retaliatory for her actions. Like,
I mean, sometimes it's got to be done. But my top for this week, you know, I'm gonna give it to Julia. I really love the conversation about her adoption process, and I think we need more moments like that across the Housewives franchises. I think that's one thing that is sort of missing in the formula a lot, and she's always captivating. I find her such an interesting person in all regards, not just her personal life and her, you know, being openly lesbian and her role in Housewives in that regard, but just all of her kookiness and sort of her genuine moments. I really enjoyed her a lot this week. What about you? How about your tops and bottoms?
so I think my bottom of the week is probably Heather Gay.
Yeah.
I wanted to give it to the judging panel on Drag Race.
Oh, yeah.
But because there was some bonker banana what? I can't.
I think you combined
There's some
those two.
crazy stuff going on in my brain right now. But there were some bonkers banana pants ruling things happening over on Drag Race this week that really frustrated me. But Heather, I can't, like, for someone who I really have enjoyed in seasons past, to really take the nosedive that she has this season, and then for it to be reiterated that apparently, I mean, this is according to Whitney, but apparently she goes on to
do the same on Girls Trip.
Do the same on Ultimate Girls Trip in Thailand.
Yes.
In Thailand, and it's just really, really frustrating to see her fall this far. I hope she can turn things around next season, but I don't have high hopes for it, but I hope. My top for the week, I'm gonna go with Nicole.
Yeah.
On Miami. I really enjoy her anyway, but this week I felt like she really owned up to, you know, what Alexia was saying. It was like, look, I made a mistake and I will own that. But she also stood her ground and was like, I didn't know that you were upset. So how can you expect me to apologize for something that I did not know was an issue?
Yeah.
Like, you have to bring it to me first. I have no problem apologizing when I am in the wrong, but I need to know I'm in the wrong. Like, how am I supposed to do something if I don't know I'm in the wrong? So I love the fact that she was able to stand her ground, but also apologize when it was needed.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really classy and really a good example of how Housewives should be behaving across the board. That was very classy, in my opinion.
I agree.
Hey, thanks for joining us this week on A Gay and His Enby. Tune in next week for more of our recaps and hot takes. Be sure to subscribe and leave a review wherever you're listening, and check us out on our social media at A Gay and His Enby on all the platforms. A special shout out to Shane Ivers, who wrote Pulsar, the song we're using for our theme. For my husband Eamon, I'm Merlin, and we're out.
This show is a member of the Sorgatron Media Podcast Network. Find out more at sorgatronmedia.com.